Hi, I'm Daniel with etrailer, and today we're going to take a look at the WaySafe True Tow weight distribution system. If you have a large travel trailer like our neighbor did today, he just had this bumper pull, and this is pretty big even for the truck he has. He has a 1-ton truck, and this put a ton of rear end sag on his truck, and it was pretty unsafe to drive this down the highway. Just how heavy this is, it could create a lot of sway and make this pretty uncontrollable. So adding a weight distribution system will use tension to take some of that tongue weight off the back end, take some of that sag away, and it'll redistribute that weight throughout both axles of your truck. So weight distribution is definitely needed for those heavy rigs. And why the WaySafe? Well, I personally like this one. Other ones don't have this dial that will tell you the tongue weight, which is really nice. So it takes all the guesswork out of setting these up. I've set other ones up, and it is just guesswork. You're kind of setting it all up and adjusting it and trying to make it look nice, but this one, you have that dial and it tells you exactly the tongue weight it needs to be. Now this also has an app that you can take a lot of measurements and put it all in the app, and it'll tell you what this tongue weight reading should be, where it should be perfectly distributed for your specific rig, which is really nice. This weight distribution has a 2.5-inch shank, which will fit in your 2.5-inch hitch receiver opening on your truck. Now this is going to be the heavyweight version, so it can handle a gross trailer weight of 22,000 pounds and a tongue weight of 2,200 pounds. Some other features here has a 2 5/16 ball. And then another thing that makes it stand out is it has this screw on top, and you can adjust this with the tool provided. And it makes it a lot easier to adjust this because a lot of the other kits, they just have a tiny screw. You kind of have to take it apart and readjust it. This just makes it a lot easier. You can do it all in one step. Now another thing, it has a pin. It comes with a pin, and it is a locking pin, which is nice. No one can come and take this if you're decoupling it later on. This also has anti-sway built into it. So when you're traveling down the highway, maybe high winds, you're not going to experience that back and forth. Now, I will tell you, this is really heavy, and driving this around the parking lot, I was actually pretty scared without this. So I would not drive this without this weight distribution system. So I definitely highly recommend it if you have those heavier trailers. Now, as far as install goes, this isn't too bad. There's just a lot of things you have to adjust and keep in mind, and I'll walk you through all that in this video. But if you don't have the time or tools to get this installed yourself, you can check out our dealer locator, and you can find a professional in your area to get this installed for you. But without further ado, let's get into the install. First off, you want to pull your truck and your travel trailer on a nice even plane, and I uncoupled and we pulled the truck a little bit forward so we have room to work, and we want to find out the tongue weight. So I have this tongue weight scale here, and we're going to drop down all the weight on this scale because that's going to help us determine the height of where we're going to put our hitch. So you can use the tongue weight on the WaySafe. It does have a scale on there, but you have to do some guesswork on where to mount this on your bracket. So it's a lot easier to use a tongue weight scale like this, and it's a lot easier to read because on the scale on your WaySafe, they're a little closer together. But this is just the big truck, big RV one, and I'll go ahead and lower our trailer down. And it looks like our tongue weight is going to be 1,750 pounds. Now we need to get our trailer as level as possible, and I've added a couple pads under here. If you are at home, you could add some wood, just because we didn't want our jack stand to bottom out. But I've already leveled it out, and there is a bubble level up top here, and initially I thought that would level it out, but I rechecked and measured from the frame, the front and the back, and made sure I got the right measurement. And it looks like this was a little off, so definitely double check if you do have a level, but I'll just show you where I measured from. So there's going to be a large I-beam, that's the frame, so I'm just going to measure to the bottom of that on the front, and I got about 19 and a half, and I just want to make sure that's going to be the same on the back. Looks like we got right about the same, so we're level. With everything nice and level, we can now measure from the ground to the top of our coupler. I'll just get a tape measure the best I can. So it might be easier you can grab a small torpedo level, and this will help you get more of an accurate measurement. And we got right about 27 inches. That tongue weight measurement and the measurement from the ground to the top of the coupler, we're gonna have to do a bit of math to figure out the height of your ball mount. As per what the instructions say, you have to add 1/8 of an inch per 100 pounds of tongue weight. So we have 1,750 pounds. That means we have to have this ball mount 2 3/16 of an inch higher than what our measurement here was. This hitch bracket can be mounted in the rise or drop position. Now we have it in the rise position, and we just got it as close to that measurement as possible from the ground to the top of our ball. And then I put our large grade 8 bolts in here with a washer, and then just get a washer on the other side, split lock washer, and a nut. Now, something to keep in mind is if you have airbags on your rear suspension, like our neighbor does today, you want to have those deflated. The reason being is because they're really trying to do the same job as the weight distribution system. They're trying to level everything out. And for the weight distribution to work correctly, you need to have that real sag on the back end of the truck because they can't interfere with each other. So just make sure you have those lowered down before you get the system set up. Now we can tighten and torque our bolts down. I have a 1 1/8 inch wrench and socket. I'm just going to torque these to the specs in the instructions. It is pretty high. So if you don't have a torque wrench that you can use at home, you can usually rent one from your local auto parts store. Now we can get our brackets onto our trailer frame. First, you want to measure from the center of your coupler over to 32 inches. And I'm going to make a mark right there. And we're going to just check, make sure there's nothing behind here, no brake lines, no propane lines or wiring that we're going to crush. We're looking okay. Sometimes there can be bracketry in the way that you can't move. So you can move that back to 27 inches from the center of the coupler. Try and keep it as far back at that 32 mark because it'll work the best at that mark. So now with that mark in place, we can get our brackets. We'll grab our C channel and we'll get our 3.5 inch carriage bolt, put that through that top hole. There's gonna be a large space and these couple of square holes are gonna be facing the bottom. We'll take the bracket that goes on the back, I'll fish it through and get this attached. And then on the back, I'm just gonna get a split washer and a nut. And then I'll just put our other 3.5 inch carriage bolt through the bottom. I'll just get this loosely in place. And then now I can just move this around and center it on the mark we just made. So I'll get that centered up. And looks like we are hitting a bracket over here. So looks like there's gonna be where we're gonna have to tighten it down. We can tighten and torque these down now. And I'm using a 3/4 inch socket. And when you're tightening these down, you wanna make sure you go back and forth between the two because you don't wanna tighten one down and pinch one side. So you just wanna do it evenly and you wanna make sure that this bracket stays nice and straight. Next, we'll take our spring arm platform and get this installed. So I'm gonna take our 3-inch carriage bolts, get that put through the square side. And we want the top of this bracket to be 10 inches below that measurement we got for our coupler height. So we got 27 inches, so we wanna be minus 10 inches for that. So we wanna be at 17. So let me get a measurement at that. And where I put it is looking pretty close. That's actually very close, so you just wanna get as close as possible. And once you've done that, we'll just get our hardware on and tighten and torque it down. Now moving forward, it is important to figure out what the distributed tongue weight is, and WeightSafe provides an app so you can do that pretty easily. You can just put the vehicle you're working with, and then what type of weight distribution you have. We have a travel trailer, and then there's going to be a couple questions on different measurements, and it'll prompt you through all these, like what you need to measure and where, and the instructions it's in there as well, so it's not too difficult there. And then once you've hit all those, you can hit done. and calculate, and then it will tell you the safe tongue weight range that your scale on your weight distribution hitch should read. Now we can put our spring arms in place, so I'll take our pin out and just line the holes up. Just put that pin back in. And I'll just do this on both sides. Now we can hook up our coupler onto our ball. Before we do that, I'm going to move these out of the way, of course, so we don't back into our trailer. Now we got it backed up, and I'll lower our trailer down. We'll just keep an eye out on that tongue weight scale. Put them in that square hole, and this will help you get these in place because there's a lot of tension on these. So I'm just going to lift up and have this slide into place. Now it might make a loud snapping noise. Just like that. And with that in place, we can get our L bracket, put that down, and put our pin in. Now with those spring bars in place, we can dial in the DTW that we got on that app. Now our safe zone is 3,950 pounds, and we can adjust the lead screw on top accordingly, depending on if we need to go up or down for what the scale says. Now on the app, we did get a lower number because we accidentally put feet in instead of inches, so definitely put inches for all your measurements to get that number. And this is that lead screw I was talking about, and when adjusting this, you want to make sure this bolt is going to be loose down here, and depending on what your value is and what you need it to be, if you want it to be less weight, then you want to turn this counterclockwise. If you want it to be more weight, you want to turn it clockwise. So there's actually a tool on the end of your device that you can use. So I'm going to need to go clockwise to make it more. And if this is a little bit difficult to use, you might be hitting your bed. You can just use an 1 1/8" socket. That might make it a little easier for you. Kind of use this instead. That needle is reading within that range we saw on the app, so that means we're good to go. Now earlier, it wasn't getting much over 3,000, it was bottoming out, so if that happens to you, all you have to do is come over here, take everything apart, and take these bolts off, and we actually raised this bracket up just 1 notch, and that helped us out achieve what we needed to. You can tighten or loosen this quite a bit. I'll actually show you the bolt. So this is just a long bolt, and just tightening it or loosening it within this bracket. And that's just basically teetering this to add more pressure or take pressure off of these spring bars. So you don't want it to bottom out either way, and we're looking good. We've got about 3/4 inch, so we're all set. Something else to consider is you want your spring arm to be as parallel as possible to your frame. So we actually ended up lowering this down and just tightening our screw up top here a little bit more to get within our range. And that worked out good for us, so it's something to keep in mind if you're running into that same issue. But once you've dialed everything in and adjusted everything, last thing to do is to tighten the clamp bolt. So I'll get this torqued down. Now once you get everything dialed in, you can hook those safety chains back up and travel on to your next journey with your new WaySafe weight distribution system.